In this demo, we're going to look at rolling our own action hooks and hooking into them using doAction. If we come over to our example theme, we're actually going to start off in our footer.php file. And what you'll find is once the footer tag is opened, we have a doAction WP hooks before footer. Now this is not a default WordPress hook. This is one of our own, and you could see we're namespacing it with WP hooks. Now, if we come over to our functions.php file, we could see that we have some custom code here called WP hooks before footer message, and we're hooking that into add action WP hooks before footer. So what this is going to do is when our footer.php file loads and runs this code right here, then anything that's hooked into it will execute. The only thing that's hooked in is going to be this WP hooks before footer message, and you can see we're setting a default priority of 10. Then, inside of our function, we're simply echoing out a string of text with some paragraph tags saying my custom footer text. Now, because the environment for where this is going to execute is right here in the footer.php file, it's completely fine for us to drop in some HTML that'll just display on the page. If we come over to our theme, we can see at the very bottom we see my custom footer text just as we would expect. Then, if other plugins or child themes wanted to tie into this hook, they could easily do so. Now, something that is important to mention here is that in general, you want to stay away from passing too much HTML and writing too much HTML in a functions.php file. That stuff should really be pulled out and placed inside a specific template file. So what we have in this line below, I'll comment this out, is a new function called locateTemplate that works very similar to how getTemplatePart works in our theme, but locateTemplate is what we're going to use in our functions.php file if we ever want to load a specific template. However, notice that we put the full URL path in based on where we are currently, which is functions.php, and then inside of here I have a new file called beforefooter.php. We also have to pass in the parameter of true, otherwise it will simply get this value which you could save, but it would not load this onto the actual page. So if we come into before footer, we could see that we're now properly setting up our text for localization, and we have our HTML outside of our PHP, which is a one-step improvement. Now, when we come over to our site, we can see it says instead, my custom footer template, showing us that it's loading the template instead. Now, you may ask yourself, why would I bother doing this? Why wouldn't I just code directly in my theme? And for your own theme, this wouldn't make a ton of sense necessarily, unless you expected a lot of people to create child themes off of it, in which case, rather than having to copy and paste over your footer and override things, they could simply tie into whatever hook you provide and load their own template. So this provides for a slightly cleaner architecture for working with child themes. You could also maybe imagine if you were building a plugin that you might want to create your own doAction hooks as well that either you would leverage or third-party people can extend your plugin to do even more with it. Now I'll also point out that we have remove action here. We don't necessarily want to run this. I'm just showing you that you can also remove actions that you've added yourself as well as other actions inside of WordPress. So this is a simple yet practical example of how we can begin adding doAction hooks into our own code and when they might be useful. We've also seen some best practices about moving HTML outside of your functions.php file and into separate templates. At this point, I'd suggest you pull up your own sample theme or take this one and try adding your own doAction hook, maybe in the header or somewhere else, and then hooking into it in a similar way, echoing out some simple text or loading a completely different template.